I'm going to give you some easy tips that you can apply right now to make your running form a little bit better. Now, some you may have heard before, but I think I can demonstrate it in a way that will deepen your understanding and hopefully help you do it a little bit better. Jumping right into it, you're going to start by lining up your ankles, your hips, and your shoulders. I know I have my puffy jacket on and it's hard to see, but it's too cold to take it off. But again, ankles, hips, shoulders. You don't want to be like hunching forward, or you don't want like your hips out in front of your ankles or anything like that, because that's going to start you off in a bad position. And from here, when you're all aligned, you want to kind of like rock back and forth to feel the weight distributed evenly through your foot tripod. So your foot tripod is going to be the heel. It's hard to balance. Let's see if I can do it this way. The ball of your big toe and the ball of your little toe. Now, running shoes may make this feeling a little bit harder, but you should get the general feeling of your weight distributed evenly between your foot tripod. So from here, what you want to do, now you want to lean from the ankles. So this is the part you probably heard before, lean from the ankles. But if you do it like when you're not in a good like posture, it's not going to have the same benefits as if you start with good posture. So from here, lean from your ankles. And you could stop here a little bit and just see how this feels like leaning forward, and then keep going until you have to take that step. And that step where you're falling, that is how you're starting your run. And so you really want to feel this lean from your ankles as you start your run, and try to keep it going for as long as you can. Now, if you're new to this and this feels quite a bit different than how you've been running, this isn't going to feel natural and you're not going to be able to hold it for very long. So what you want to do is maybe stop a couple times during your run and just get in this reset position where, again, you just go back from the beginning and then you lean from your ankles. This can also help make sure you're not overstriding, because when we overstride, we tend to look a little straight up, and you typically landing with more of a straight leg and landing on your heel. I'm not saying landing on your heel is bad, but when you do it when you're overstriding, so again, looking more like this, that creates a lot of force on your lower leg, or even really up the chain. Could even lead to some like hip issues, but especially like lower leg stress. When we lean from our ankles and you're getting this position, it's harder to land with a straight leg out in front of you. And so that's why if you typically have lower leg injuries and you know you overstride and just like land really hard, this can really help with that. So moving on to the next tip, which is really just tying this together to help you keep that lean from your ankles. You go back. Once again, I'm going to drill this into your head. Ankles, hips, shoulders aligned. Do this whenever you're standing. It's going to help a lot. Actually, a little quick tip here, little advice. If you have chronic feet problems or your feet constantly ache, it's probably because you're just not standing in a very balanced position. But moving on, to the next little tip from this position, think about having a string right at the top of your head and pulling you straight up. So you can kind of even see when I think about that, like I get a little bit taller. So applying this to the ankle lean, think about now this string's pulling you straight up, but also like a little bit forward. So you have a nice diagonal line going from your ankles to the top of your head. And then you go. And it's hard to demonstrate this when I'm not running, but thinking about the string pulling you up as you're running, that's going to help you keep the lean from your ankles. It's going to help you from like not staring down. I know sometimes when I'm trail running, I get in the habit of like staring at the ground. But if I think about getting pulled up from my head, then I'll keep a nice forward position and I can still see the ground just fine. So this next tip is all about decreasing your impact force, or how much stress you're placing on your body as you run. And this tip is to increase your cadence. Now, this isn't going to apply to everybody. If your cadence is always naturally over 180, this might not be the best tip for you. But if you're like in the 150s, the 160s, this tip could help you handle a lot more miles safely and really help reduce your rate of injuries. So increasing your cadence, a lot of people have a love-hate relationship. Love because it can really reduce the impact stress on your body. So you just feel like you can handle so much more. But it can take time to implement. It's gonna feel awkward at first. You know, you might feel like your perceived effort goes up a little bit. And that's typically because it's something you have to constantly think about. But there are ways to help make that a little bit easier. And you know, I've been coaching for close to a decade now, and what I found is the easiest thing to do is honestly listening to music with a metronome set to however steps you want to take per minute. So let's say you're at 160 steps per minute right now, and you want to get to 165, 170. You can find a metronome and even pair it with music that sets to 165, 170 beats per minute. Also now, on a lot of watches now, there's actually a metronome that you can listen to while you're running. This is probably one of my favorite things to use. So on your watch, look to see if you have the metronome, and then you could set it to whatever number you want. So if you want it to set to 180, you can do that. If you want to just, I don't suggest trying to go from like 160 to 180, but you can go from like 160 to 165 or 170. So you can set that on your watch, and as the beats go, you know, your feet are hitting the ground at the same time. If you're unsure about what your current cadence is, a lot of watches do have it, so you might just be able to look on Strava and look just at the cadence tab and see what it is. You may have just never noticed it before. But if you don't have a device to count your cadence for you, what you can do is go for a run, and for 1 minute, just count how many times, I'll say my left foot hits the ground in 1 minute. So let's say my left foot hits the ground 90 times in 1 minute. Then I multiply 90 times 2, and my cadence would be 180. So all you're doing, again, is counting how many steps one foot takes for 1 minute, and then multiplying it by 2, and that's your cadence. One other thing you can try to increase your cadence is to think about moving your arms faster, because when you move your arms faster, your feet are going to move faster. And for some reason, it can often be easier for runners to think about moving your arms faster than your feet. But just to be clear, you don't really want to do this. You still want to make sure you're moving through your shoulders. But again, like sometimes doing both, listening to a metronome and moving your arms a little bit faster, that can really help tie it in together. And if you try this like during an entire run, it kind of stresses you out. What I typically suggest is do it for the first mile or so of your run, and then maybe don't place all your focus on it, but just check in every now and then, or think about your cadence every now and then throughout the rest of your run. And I'd also say to think about cadence the last little bit of your run, because sometimes during that last little bit of the run, like we're tired, and so our cadence slows down. So if you think about at the end of your run, then you're training yourself to have a higher cadence even when you're a little bit tired. Those are my running form tips for you. If you're gonna try it out, let me know in the comments below. Would love to hear how your progress goes. If you wanna learn more about running form and even just moving your body correctly, check out the Higher Running course. Learn to coach yourself to your highest potential. We also have training plans from 5Ks up to 100 miles, and you can find that all at higherrunning.com. I'm your coach, Sandy Nightpaver. Whether you're trying just to run 1 mile or up to 100 miles, I am here to help you on your journey. Until next time, keep running wild.